Welcome to a Leader's Journey podcast. I'm your host, Joel Gunn. Today, Brent Fessler is back with me. Dr. Brent Fessler, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Joel. Good to be back, man.
How was your holidays?
It's good.
Let's go ahead and date the show. Nathan always says don't do that. So.
Yeah. No, I'm wearing a sweater. So in Texas, if you're wearing a sweater, it must be wintertime.
It must be cold.
It's 60 degrees outside, I think. So time to get the sweaters out.
Not too bad. So we've been together a couple of times now. Was talking the other day, and you had some thoughts you wanted to share around keeping your rock stars in tough times.
Yeah, I think it's a timely topic for a lot of the folks that we work with, too. And you know, when things get tough, like what do we need to be focused on in our organizations and our companies? And because sometimes we just think we need to cut back, or there's when I hesitate calling it tough times because it's some people are contracting a little bit because their market is contracting, others are growing like crazy. And so I think the levers that we pull may be very similar things, right? So what are the most valuable, what's the most important thing that we can be doing if we were needing to contract or if we're growing like crazy? Mm-hmm. And I think one of the most important things that we can do is invest in our people and make sure that the rock stars, as you called it, or as we're calling it today, how do we make sure that we're keeping our rock stars on there? Because that's what we're going to build our organization around, whether it's in a hard time and we're having to tighten the belt, or we're having to really climb a mountain and things are growing quickly. So,
from a leader's perspective, I agree with your opening comment. I think, though, my experience has been leaders think differently when they're contracting versus when they're growing. Whether they should or shouldn't, they do, right? The market sells off faster on fear than it does on growth. Leaders tend to pull the wrong levers when they're contracting because there's a fear element or there's something at play, risk, whatever.
Pressure, yeah.
Versus in a growth mode, you tend to be a little more of a risk taker, tend to be more willing to invest in your people. And so I'm not sure where you're headed, but if it's now or later in the conversation, if there's some distinction there, maybe call that distinction out.
Well, yeah. So I think a general theme in this should be making sure that we're maintaining altitude as leaders, that we're looking holistically, that we don't lose sight of who we are, whether the ocean is rough or whether the ocean is smooth. So we have to remember who we are, our purpose. Like that stuff doesn't change just because a market changes, just because the environment changes. So in that, sometimes the remembering who we are is one of the harder things to keep up front, because whether it be remembering our mission and our purpose, remembering that our people are most important, or some of the longer term objectives, the big outcomes that we're after.
Congruency.
Yeah. The integrated, having your greater purpose integrated. All of those things don't have like all the deadline pieces to them that sometimes a changing market does. Hey, our sales are shifting, and so those things are easy to measure, whether you're a for-profit or a nonprofit. Right? Usually the things that are easiest to measure are not the most important things, and so a trapping for leaders is to focus on the things that are easiest to see. What is cash looking like? What are our sales numbers? How many people are showing up? If you're a church, how many people are showing up? What's the offering? Those are the easy things to measure, because if those things aren't there, the door's closed, right? So they're important, but they're not necessarily like the mission of that organization really has nothing to do with what are offering and numbers of people showing up, or in a company, right? The mission's always something grander and bigger than just, okay, what are the sales numbers? What's the cash looking like? Because if we just focus on the things that are easiest to measure, they're going to be the shallower things. And so we will tend to pull the wrong levers. Hey, our expenses are too high. Let's cut expenses. Okay, so we just start going down. Where's the biggest number on the expense, right? So like training, right? Or, maybe it's marketing, if we want to talk, not about people, or maybe it's just salary, right? We look at the salary number and it's like, we got to knock the salary number down. And so, you put a math number on there, we got to drop it by 10%, or we got to drop it by 20%. And so, man, you could flip a coin and who is it? And that's a trapping, right? To just unilaterally start making decisions that are based off of shallow information. We forget who we are and why we're there and what's most important, what's most valuable in it. Yeah.
How do you recommend leaders stay aware of, like actively aware, keep in the forefront, this is who I am, this is who we are, when like, how am I going to make payroll tomorrow?
Yeah. Yeah. So the work that we do with integrators, I like to call it identity work, whether it's on the corporate culture side, it's making sure that we've integrated who we are all throughout our policy process, our people, our decision making, our strategy. You should be able to look at, any piece of your company. It should be coming out of people's mouths, right? You should be seeing your organization should be oozing who you are, right? You shouldn't have to just go to your website to see who a company is, what their core values are. You should be seeing in all these places, and that's true for individuals as well. So, if as a leader we cannot articulate right here, this is who we are, this is why we're here, these are our values, then that's a great place to start. If I do have a mission statement, why don't I know it? For one, is it relevant? Is it robust? Is it the right one? So I need to make sure that the way that I'm describing who we are is accurate and it's robust. It's deep enough. It's complete enough. Test it. Is my identity going to hold up when times do get tough? And so, hey, if times are tough or if things are changing, is that still who I want to be? All right. So that's probably the first thing to do is go back to how that identity is articulated. But then that's also then to start looking at, is that identity showing up in our dashboards? Because if I'm relying on my dashboards and my team is relying on our dashboards to make decisions, to pull levers, to navigate whatever environment that we're in, if that dashboard is not communicating and reflecting what our identity says we are, then I'm going to be very likely that my team and myself, that we're going to be making decisions that forget about who we are. And why this is important. I'm engineer. My undergraduate was in engineering, and I was doing a culture session with a group. This was 3 years ago. I was doing this culture session, and the core value that we were diving into was integrity. And so most of the people around the table gave a great answer. Integrity is, because that's what we were doing. We were trying to get everybody's input. What is integrity to you? What does the dictionary say? And they would paraphrase, hey, integrity is doing the right thing when nobody's watching, and doing the right thing. That's a great definition. Mm-hmm. Well, there was a guy at the table that was an engineer, and he said, look, I'm an engineer. Integrity to me is a little different. It's whether or not the finished product was built according to design. And that is integrity to me. And so as that kind of sunk in for a second, it's not just doing the right thing. It's, am I building, am I operating and functioning according to the design, which in an organization's case is our purpose, our mission, our core values. And so if we get off of those things because of pressure of the market, pressure of the environment, whether it be technology, economy, social, political, all the usual pestle things that you do in strategic planning. If those things are trying to push me off of what we've normally been doing, that guy's comment said, that's an integrity issue. Because usually we're saying integrity, well, it's like lying, it's the standard things. Am I lying? Am I, being nice? Am I doing good things? But for him then, as an engineer, once we started getting off mission, that's an integrity issue. And so how do we keep our teams on mission? First, it's got to be clear. Second, they got to know it. And so if we haven't invested in making sure that our team understands our mission, our values, and what that really means for everyday work, and how we deal with customers, how we evaluate our people, how we compensate them, how we build our strategy. If we haven't invested in having them understand that, right, then we're going to tend to fall off of our purpose, fall off of our mission in that. So those are some important things on how a leader would approach. How do I stay on? How do I make sure I'm going to be making decisions? It's kind of like it needs to be a test, and each organization you can probably come up with their own name, right? Of does it pass the whatever test? Does it pass the
Like the Rotary has the four-way test.
the Rotary has the four-way test. When I think I've talked about this before in parenting, we had the love test with our kids. So here's what love is. If it doesn't pass that test, don't do it. If it does, then you're allowed to. It may not be the right thing, but so we need to come up with that framework for our own test as a leader. I need to be going to this very specific, very robust test for me to be able to say this is right or wrong for us. And usually that's wrapped up in our organizational identity statements, the purpose, the vision, the core values.
You consult a lot of companies. I as well. Without violating any of your company's trust or names, what percent would you say are really living out their core values and their mission statement?
Well, so I would say 0%, and I think it's always going to be 0%, because one of the things I emphasize with clients is that, and this is kind of an engineering concept with control systems, your ideal self, which is who you've defined who you are, which can change over time, is almost always going to be different than the actual self. And part of living out either a personal life of character or business with character is consistently closing the gap between those things. This is who I know we're supposed to be as an organization. Here's what actually happened last week. What do we do about it? We have a feedback loop. We can analyze that as a group, analyze that as a team, as a leader. I need to be doing that same thing and be making decisions that gets us back to who we are. And so I would say 0%. None of us are ever living out our core values the way that at 100%. We're all off of it. And I think actually the ones who recognize the most that they're off are the ones that are the closest to it, if that makes sense. Kind of the irony of, those who are looking in the mirror the most, they see the most error, they see the most opportunities for growth, are the ones that are probably closest to their ideal self.
Kind of like Jim Collins talks about in his book, The Brutal Facts. The people that are more willing to embrace those tend to lead the better companies.
Yeah, for sure.
And make the biggest differences. So somebody viewing the podcast, let's say they're either in crisis mode or they're since they're going into crisis mode, not necessarily living out their core values the way they'd like to. How do they communicate with their team? Like, let's just assume something's imminent, an imminent negative.
Mm-hmm.
How do they communicate with their team based on your experiences and your understanding? What's the best way to go into that? It's like kind of re-level set, re-engage, or?
Well, so I think if we've got a good definition of our corporate identity, we need to make that our language, our vocabulary. The more that we can make that our taxonomy, how we talk about things. And so going into changes or crisis or difficulties is actually a great opportunity for an organization or a team. It's like, hey, we need to make sure we don't forget who we are. Actually, we need to maybe we've been comfortable in other times where we didn't have to focus as much. Things are going great, everybody's succeeding, and now things may be difficult or changing, and so we need to we're all going to need to focus on it. And as a leader, if they haven't been doing that themselves, that's a perfect time to own it and say, look, I'm the first to model that haven't been doing this as much as we should, but that means that it's more important though right now that we all dive into this, and this is going to be part of our vocabulary. And that may be, investing in messaging. That would be a great time to put it up on the wall. Be a great time to be, how do I work our values into my communication, into my messaging, into my own thinking? Go have some mugs made, or go have some T-shirts made. I mean, go ahead and use some of those techniques. But there's Vital Smarts has a great book on change, and it'll come to me. I think it's called Influencers. and it's about organizational change. And they talk about generally there's the education side and there's the motivation side. Those two dimensions with our organization, with our teams, and with our people, environmentally as well. So you think about making sure that I'm communicating and educating, but then also making sure that I'm motivating well with this framework. And so that's a great time to be highlighting if we've got a core value of stewardship or ownership, putting your name on it, things like that. That now you're using it to communicate. Let me make sure everybody knows what this is. Creating conversations and discussions, and that's kind of a generic thing to do. Is talking about generating discussion around these core values or these missions and things like that. But getting everybody to talk about it, because it should not just be a speech at a staff meeting. You need to generate discussion. Tell me, when did you see Joel putting your name on something in the last couple of weeks at work? Tell me about a story. Tell me where you saw it. And you're getting your team to start using it in their communication, in their vocabulary. And then you can use it in evaluation as well, and motivation. So we're going to recognize people that we see that are exhibiting this kind of thing. We're going to make sure that we promote and let everybody see this is a great example. If you can show a great non-example, that's a little bit touchy. If how much damage you might do with that. But even if you give little bonuses or somehow recognition to work with the motivation side, help them connect with what does putting your name on it connect with you and things, and so those are some kind of first cut things to make sure that framework gets used in our decision making, in our operation, in our functioning. Is you pull it in your vocabulary. Right? Because if you're not mentioning it, people aren't thinking about it. If your clients are seeing your core values more than your team is because they're going to their website, you've got to find another place to put the core values. We need to get it more visible, get it into our team meetings, get it into the way that we talk. And if it's not in that, then it's not really part of our culture. It's just a name tag or a label that sits over there, but we really haven't integrated it into who we are. Yeah.
In either in your own experiences or the research that you've done, keeping the rock stars, what are the kinds of things, or what's the kind of culture, what's the kind of compensation, whatever those motivators are, what tends to keep a rock star?
Yeah, those are great questions, and it's going to be a complex answer. It's multiple things. I think the more we can think about the entire equation, it's this plus this plus this plus this plus this. What are all those things? Even for my people, and maybe different for a lot of people. And so we can talk about a few of the things to look at. You mentioned one. There's compensation, right? And that's like the shallow. I've got numbers already floating around. I'm talking about dollars. And so if we need to keep these people, then we're going to start throwing compensation at them, and that type of thing. Or we're going to have to, cut back on folks. Compensation is important, but it is one of those things that once you get past a certain point, it's really not as important as some of the other things.
So it's got to be enough compensation, feed the family, pay the bills, industry equivalency of some sort.
Yeah.
So in other words, like a brain surgeon is not going to go work for $50,000 a year,
right?
Unless he's gone on some mission thing, mercy ships or something,
right?
But he doesn't necessarily need to make $5 million a year to be happy.
Correct.
And I would assume every job, there's an expectation a ditch digger is going to make at least this much and expect this kind of lifestyle,
right?
In America,
right?
So once you meet that, whatever that kind of peer.
So yes and no. So there's that idea of I need to be enough, and then after that I'm kind of chasing. It's a losing game to keep chasing past that point.
Diminishing returns.
But I think maybe the more valuable things to talk about is if your culture is shallow, then your employees are going to be making decisions on the shallow things like salary, right? So if your culture is shallow, everybody's going to be making decisions, including the leaders and your employees. They're going to be making decisions on the shallow stuff like salary. And so thinking about what are the deeper things, what are the rest of the things in the equation that matter even more. Being part of a great culture is one of those things, but what is a great culture that they want to be a part of? The research that I've reviewed talk about a few things in that. One, they want to be a part of something that's growing, and these are not in any order, but they want to be a part of something that's growing. They like to be, we're kind of wired up to grow. We don't want to be just maintaining or contracting. We want to be a part of something that's growing. But that's growth in two different areas. One, I like the organization to be growing, and maybe the market says that that's just not going to happen right now. The other thing is, I want to be a part of something that I'm growing. I want to be growing. If I'm not growing, I'm contracting and I'm dying, right? So like that's a pretty general, everybody's different, but it's a pretty general thing. If I'm not growing, I feel like I'm dying. And we don't want our team feeling like they're dying, right? Because if I feel like I'm dying, I want to leave here. Maybe I haven't articulated it that I feel like I'm dying. Mm-hmm. But that's the thing. If I feel like I'm not growing, I'm going to have more of those feelings like I'm dying here. And so how do we then invest in our employees' growth? So that's going to be one of the things that there's lots of things. What are the things that would help them grow? Can I sit down with them and take more of a coaching approach with them? Can I hire a coach for them? You know, a coach compared with a big salary increase is going to be a really good deal, mm-hmm. right? You pay a few $100 an hour for a great coach, and that coach has come in to invest individually with your team, with each of the members on your team, and now they're like, I'm getting attention, I'm getting to build a plan for myself, a growth plan for myself. And this is the great thing that my experience and a lot of the other research shows is that once I start getting some of this coaching, all the other stuff in the personal life that's not work, the marriage, the relationship, the family, the personal finance, even spirituality, all these things, they start flourishing more, right? And they make this connection. That's happening because they're investing in me at work. They care about me as a person. So it leads into the next thing. Yes, I'm investing. You want to be a part of something growth, but you also want to be somewhere where they care about me. I'm valued. Yes, that's a salary piece, but it's also they see me as a person. They see me as an adult. They see me as an infinitely valuable person, not just a resource. And what are the things that we communicate to our people that they are people and not just machines? Right? Are we very directive in our style with them where we're saying you have to do this, and maybe you have to for whatever industry the organization is in. You're very compliance oriented, so maybe you can't get around those things. If we have to be that way for some process, TQM kind of things or whatever it is, where we've got to be very very specific and not very much leeway in things. Are there other ways where we can communicate humanity and adultness to them? And a big one of those is autonomy. And so if you're telling me everything to do, I feel like a kid. If you're telling me you can't do this, you have to come exactly at this time, and you have to work with this people and those things, I feel like I have no freedom. I feel like I have no autonomy, and this is not a great place for me to flourish and thrive. I'm a resource. And so if you can't do it in how you work, you can provide autonomy or maybe in another area like schedule, or with team, like who you work with. And so there's 3 or 4 different areas where we can approach autonomy. And if we can't do it in one area just because of the way our work is, we can look at other places.
So the research says as long as I have some autonomy in at least a small way, I don't need a total autonomy to be happy.
Yeah, I mean, we know we don't have total autonomy when we come to work. We're choosing to come under some boundaries, under some constraints. But if it's all constrictive, I feel constricted, and I don't necessarily want to stay there. If I'm getting an opportunity to go work somewhere else where I perceive that I'm going to have more autonomy, well, I'm going to make that jump over there, right? Because I feel like more of a human. I feel like I can grow. I feel more freedoms and feel like I can offer more. They never. Another piece of that is they never ask me what my opinion is. They never ask for my perspective on things, and so that's another way to treat folks like like adults. What do you think? Be a problem solver with us on this.
I remember a case study where the leader told the people, I'm going to give you autonomy. You can paint the break room whatever color you want. I'll buy the paint brushes and the paint. And they come in and it's this brilliant, hot pink. And, the people didn't believe the leader, like, yeah, they're going to make us paint it gray or blue or, so we're going to paint it pink just to kind of test the waters. And the leader's like, cool. All right. Well, if that's what you guys wanted. Yeah. And kind of shock the culture. Like, right. Really? They'd let us keep the break room pink? So, but it was one of those, the employee tested the autonomy. Employees tested their newly found autonomy.
That's a great example, because if you think about it, when we're everybody, not just leaders, when something shifts or changes, our gut reaction is to reach for control. We've got to grab onto something. I've got to reach for control. And so that's a common thing in leaders. I feel like I'm going to be a better leader if I control more things, right? And just reflect on yourself. If I'm going to be controlled more, am I going to perform more? No. I'll be constricted. I need to be cultivated and things like that. That's where the real high performance is. If we're talking about rock stars, right? Some people, they're going to work under control because they really don't have the hunger or some of the other motivating factors that it takes. But if we're talking about keeping our rock stars, right? Rock stars are not going to want to stay where they're constricted. They're not going to want to stay where there's more control. And so that's a leader awareness thing, that if I'm going to naturally grab for more controls, I'd have to. Some things I'm going to have to control. We've got to drive the ship.
If you're manufacturing airplanes, you probably want some control on that.
I'm responsible for it, but don't control more than you need to. I was having a conversation with somebody, and so it was they were talking about facial hair for a team, and for safety reasons they have to wear masks, and so they said no facial hair at all, and so that was the issue. And so if I'm an employee in that, and you say no facial hair, as an example here, well, I can have facial hair here. It's not going to compromise the safety of the mask. But if you're continue to tell me that I can't have this, right, this mustache or hair right here, that's not compromising the seal on the mask. Well, now I just feel like you're controlling me. You told me it was about safety, but it feels more like it's just about control. And whether that's true or not, there may be another reason, but my perception is all you're trying to do is control me. And so I'm going to naturally push back on that. And so I'm not, a flourishing employee. I'm not a high-performing employee in that. I feel more like there's an against in that type of thing. And so the leader has to reflect and is like, is that something I really need to control? Is there a real reason that I'm bringing more controls into this thing? Because I need to recognize the price of adding controls is generally a ceiling. It means I'm putting a limitation on the more controls that I put in. It doesn't mean we don't have any controls, which we've talked about in the past. But
there was one company, I think I've told you this story before. I don't believe in the podcast, though. I go in working with the team. We're looking at their process. And we get to this one point in the process, and the guy goes, oh, it's going to be a while. I was like, for what? And he's like, well, I got to have that unlocked. And I'm like, oh, okay, what's up? And well, the cabinet's locked. And I said, well, why is the cabinet locked? And he goes, that's just the way it's always been. I said, well, what's in the cabinet? The stamp I need to stamp the drawing. Okay. Well, he's working in a aerospace manufacturing. He is certifying the parts meet spec, meet the drawing, and are airworthy. And he's the guy that actually stamps the drawing. But somebody in leadership some time ago decided that the stamp needed to be locked up, and he couldn't have a key because he didn't need a key. Yeah. And so I go to the leadership. I'm like, this guy's certifying the part. He's the one that actually stamps the drawing. The FAA is cool with this entire process, but you guys added a lock so that people can't steal the stamp. I get that. Why can't he have a key?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, kind of sounds stupid when you put it that way.
Yeah.
But to somebody it made sense that we need that control.
Yeah.
But okay, have the control, but give the guy the key,
Yeah.
And so he felt undervalued. And just my little intervention on his part to say, hey, can he have a key? he looked at me like some sort of hero. It's like, really, you could just get that done for me? Like, why did you ask yourself? But anyway, but that was just another reminder to me. And I being a leader myself, as you're talking, I'm like, crap, I probably pull controls more than I need to.
Oh, we all do. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
But sometimes when you're the outsider, it's kind of obvious, like, why are you doing that?
Sure. Well, and so to that point, leaders in this time is not a time to pull away either from if we've been in a group with counsel or things. That can be if I need to cut costs, like, that's a luxury. Mm-hmm. And I think even as leaders, we need to remember we need to invest in ourselves, mm-hmm. and we need to make sure that we're surrounded by great counsel. If for some reason, as an example, that our leadership team has to get smaller and now I don't have as much counsel around me, can I go backfill that and establish some relationships that are close enough and robust enough outside of my organization to make sure that I'm still getting the perspective, the mirror, the foot washing, as sometimes we call it. Those are the things that we can't compromise on. Although the tendency is, that's a luxury piece.
Cut training, cut consulting, cut
even my own development, mm-hmm. as a leader. Mm-hmm. I know I need to be performing my best, and so to round out the third kind of element on what our team wants to be a part of, they're still going to want to be a part of something that's transcendent, that's bigger than themselves. They want to be a part of doing something good. There's lots of ways to describe this, and so. Generosity is not something that we want to back off from either. If we've been building generosity into our culture or greater purpose kinds of outcomes, when times get changed, when they get tough and difficult, it's actually a time to go ahead and invest more.
So we're benevolent when times are good, but you're out of luck because times are bad. So we're not benevolent anymore.
Yeah. And I mean, I understand it. I mean, you think about it, there's pressures pushing me out of that. And this is when good leaders, if I just have to follow where the currents are taking me, I'm not a leader. Mm-hmm. I'm just going along with the flow. We have to recognize, I have to recognize, wait a second, what is valuable, what's important, what's true, who are we, and we're going to be that even more. Mm-hmm. Like that's the time where I'm going to have to be even more of who we say we are.
More benevolent. We're going to keep giving back to the community.
Be more intentional.
Community needs us more in a bad time than they do in good times.
Yeah. Right. And people want to be a part of that, right? Because that feels real. They want to be a part of something real. They want to be a part of something good. And when they see that, when they see that we are the same in the good times and the bad times, that's what they want to be around. And there's loyalty that develops in there. And that loyalty, that connection, the deeper connection, like loyalty is kind of a progressively depth of connection. I'm loyal because you're paying me a bunch, right? As soon as somebody else pays me more, I'm loyal to them, mm-hmm. right? Or I'm loyal because you care for me. As soon as you stop caring for me, then I'll move on. Or I'm loyal because you're investing in what I believe in, and more than just the money. Like my total self-actualization and transcendence is satisfied and fulfilled because I'm a part of this organization. Well, I'm not going to leave that. They're caring for me. They're doing good things. I'm getting compensated well enough. I'm being invested in. I'm flourishing here. Why would I leave this place?
Mm-hmm. Right? Especially in a downtime.
Especially in a downtime, because you've invested in me, and then they start responding by investing back into the team. Mm-hmm. And unless you have something else, I've got another topic.
Go.
Well, there's another great study that is good to even look at here. There's a study on Netflix, and there was a time in their history when they had to cut their team. Well, if you have to cut your team, how are you going to do it? You're going to let go of the marginal folks, the ones who maybe they weren't about to get fired, but if I've got to choose between these two people, I'm going to keep my rock star. Mm-hmm. And so what ended up happening is their team number, their FTE count dropped drastically, is either by a third or half, is something significant. Wow. What they found out, because they had basically kept the rock stars and some of the people with bad attitudes, was the really probably one of the important things out of that study, is that the people who left weren't just low performers, but they also, their attitudes went with them. Well, now I've got fewer people, but whether they're rock stars because of their capability or capacity or just because of their attitudes, they actually produced more output and accomplished more objectives. They were more productive with the team that was a smaller, but they had basically gotten rid of some of the suckers. If you're thinking of botanical talks and measures, we've got suckers. Yeah, they're alive, they're green, but they're taking more than they really are giving to the overall tree or the fruit. And so they effectively got rid of some suckers. And so if we are going to have to make some salary decisions, then we want to look at, okay, I need to keep my rock stars here because actually this could be a gift where we are able to grow, become more productive, and the people that we have are able to flourish more. And so looking at the folks on the team that just haven't come along, well, it's going to be get sooner than later, because if there's opportunities for your rock stars to go somewhere else, because that's another thing, is if there's another company that's out there, I need more rock stars, they're going to come and try to take yours, and that's going to be a double whammy. So if you lose a rock star and you keep a mediocre person, well, it's going to hurt you twice, right? So if anything, you want to minimize the number of mediocre folks on your team and maintain and keep your rock stars on there. Yeah.
So I think it was GE that was known for their top grading. Fire the bottom 10% every year. How do you avoid going? I mean, we both kind of roll our eyes because there was some good things came out of that, but over time it really became, most circles I run in, it's a negative because it created a culture of am I next, And so how do you take the best of what you just said, keep the rock stars without becoming that known for being the people that cut out the bottom 10%, so to speak?
We've talked a little bit before about raising the importance of people as outcomes to at least the same level or close to the same level as our other business outcomes like profit or sales or things like that. And so if I haven't done that, there's no way I can approach, I shouldn't be approaching, I've just got to get rid of the 10%. So like as an educator, because I've spent 14, 15 years in higher ed, you always wanted to meet a student as much as they would meet with you, right? But you can't learn for somebody else. So there's a limit to how much responsibility you can take on for somebody else's growth. But as far as I'm in control of it, right? This is where we leverage our control. Is I want to make every opportunity available for people to grow. I want to be giving them great feedback. I want to be giving them coaching. If I'm not able to coach them myself, then I'm going to hire some coaches. I want to give them, investing in my people. And the people who don't engage in that process, well, they're basically choosing to not be part of the organization, part of the family. It has to be some transaction where I want to invest in you, but you're the one who has to invest back in yourself and develop your attitude and things like that. But that said, I think there's some great research that talks about the mindset and the attitude that we tend to have towards a follower is much more likely going to be the mindset and attitude that they have about themselves. And so that can be like growth and fixed mindset, Carol Dweck's work. If I have a growth mindset about you, where I'm treating you like you're about to grow. I'm treating you like you have an opportunity to grow through this challenge and this difficulty, treating you like an adult. You're going to tend to see yourself that way. All right. If I treat you like, oh, you're not worth investing in. Oh, you're not worth coaching. Oh, you're not worth sending off to a class. You're going to see yourself that way. And so if I'm treating you at this level, you're going to tend to have maybe even more of a complaining attitude. Like, how do we deal with whiners and complainers in our team? Because if they're under pressure, we talked about trauma-induced or trauma-informed leadership last time. If they're in survival mode, they're going to have poor attitudes and things like that. And so if we respond to that with poor attitude, it's going to be a cycle where our team members tend to go into that. But in leaders that I've been coaching, it's fantastic to see what you hope will happen. This guy's got a crummy attitude. Well, pull him aside and say, hey, I really see you as a leader, and I want you to start behaving like a leader with the team. And I want you to know that the way that you lead, whatever your attitude is, everybody else is going to tend to have it. I was like, oh, you see me as a leader? Really? Okay. And they respond. And in talking to those leaders in months, ongoing months, are like, oh my gosh, it's like a 180 with that person. As soon as I told them I saw them as a leader, which was kind of a step of faith, because they didn't really. It's like, really? I need to tell that guy as a leader? He's not. He's a jerk.
Yeah.
But they weren't lying. They're just like, clearly you're leading because you're influencing the rest of the team.
Right.
So the thing is, they respond to that type of, when I project an identity onto you, you are going to tend to respond with it. And so those are some of the things that we can do as leaders, instead of just saying, well, you've shown us who you are. You're the bottom 10%, and so we're going to get rid of you. Before you do that, start treating your bottom 10% like they're the top half, and say, hey, I want to invest in you. I see something in you. I see this value in you. Did you know that you're a leader? Did you know that you're this? Did you know you're capable of this? And whether straighten your uniform out, because you're this. If we can try calling that out first as leaders in our team and seeing if they respond to that, then maybe you'll always have a bottom 10%, but it may not be the same people. They may now rise up, and that's what I've seen multiple times. I mean, it's not just like one data point where it got to work. Vast majority of the time, when you start to call out people like that, they will respond, and they'll respond to it. So I think sometimes we expect too much of our people that, well, they should know better. They should change their attitude. Well, leaders, important thing of leaders is to motivate. That means you're getting into somebody's heart. You're getting into their emotions. You're getting into understanding what's important to you. Who are you? And let me call that out. It's kind of the leader and the coach and the servant all wrapped up in one. And the hard thing in the context of what we're talking about today is, how do we do that in a hard time, in a tough time, in a challenging time? Because, man, we've got things in our inbox. We've got things on our dashboards that are screaming, and like, oh, man, I don't have time or the patience to go deal with a crummy attitude. And so that's like where leaders can really get stretched right now. And
well, like you said earlier, even in a growth mode,
yeah,
my inbox is full. I got customers are calling. I got prospects I need to talk to. I don't have time to invest my people because we got growth stuff going on.
That's right.
Yeah,
we're just perpetually busy.
Yeah.
And the pressures of leadership are always drawing us into all the shallow things and usually away from people. So that's why good leaders are rare, I think, is because you're always going against what the environment is trying to take you, and you're having to push against some of those winds and the currents to work on what's really important, which is the people. But we know if we invest in our people, they'll take us where we need to go. Yeah.
Let's say you're owner of a smaller company, 15, 20 employees. You're faced with a difficult decision, trying to keep your rock stars, but you've decided that gotten counsel, external counsel. You're part of a peer group. They've advised the same. You got to cut a few heads. Do you have any easy criteria, like what characteristics? Look at skills, look at attitude. Like, is there 4 or 5 things like they could, write everybody's name down on a piece of paper and kind of plot this out, like scale of 1 to 10, this person's competency, scale of 1, and to like, is it that scientific, or is it a gut feel like, she's got a bad attitude, let's fire her?
Yeah. So I think it's not going to be as scientific as we want it to be, but that shouldn't keep us from going down a nice systematic approach like that. Because what we want to do is keep our emotion out of any big decision like that. Firing somebody is one of the hardest things. If it's not hard, like something might be wrong, right? With that, where it's like, that was easy, or that was good. But that said, I think separating from somebody can be good, and oftentimes is. But the process to get there, I think the more systematic we can make it, okay, maybe it's not a calibrated number, but let's go ahead and put a number on there. What are the things that we should be considering? Let's think about core value fit, culture fit. How much are they impacting negatively or positively the people around them? What are the things that matter? use your corporate identity as part of that framework. But include things like profit, right? Are they producing for us and things? But if they are producing for us, at what cost and things? So try to be systematic about it. You may get a number. That number may not completely mean anything. It's not going to have units that mean anything. But it was in that process. It'll help you sort and understand really what is important in here. And if you come up with a number and it says these two people need to leave and they weren't the two people that you originally thought of, well, now you're like, okay, I'm surprised at that. Why? Why was I thinking these other people? Is there merit? Are the other two people I was thinking about, should they be the ones that go? But and if so, why? And that idea, it's not going to like hold up in a court or anything like that. But that is the right kind of process. So don't be concerned that like I've got to get to something that I can hold up and it has a 100% weight on it. But that type of process is important, and I think it depends on who we are as an organization and what is most important to us. But think deeply, not just shallowly. Like don't just use production numbers as okay. We're going to take our lowest producers. Nixon.
Right. What about? And I just had this thought as you were going through that. Let's say I've got Joe and Susie are the two I think I need to let go first before I do any analysis. And then I go through this process and they actually are middle of the pack numbers wise. Do I relook at the column headers, competency, skill, contribution, productivity, whatever, attitude, and go, do I need to make sure that Joe and Susie are at least a 7, 8, 9, or 10 in at least one of the columns? Like, I guess I'm trying to say, did I do a full enough assessment?
Right.
Like even the person I think's I'm actually changing my comment here. Let's assume the person that I think's the worst and my score comes out that they're the worst.
Yep.
And I look and I'm like, wow, they're 1s, 2s, 3s, 1s, assuming low numbers are bad. There's got to be something they're good at because I brought them on the team. So do I have enough column headers if I don't have something that they're at least a 6?
That's a good question to ask. Like, I don't know that there's necessarily an answer to that, right? So that's the right question to ask is, how many columns do I have? I think in general, what I'd be looking at is whether or not I have the right columns or not is our identity showing up in here? Are our business outcomes showing up in here? Our internal relationship type of thing showing up in here? Like, how are they interacting with the rest of the team?
Chemistry type.
Chemistry kind of things, teamwork kind of things. And so your first cut on making your columns may not be enough. And double that's a good sanity check. I thought people might rank out this way. They ended up ranking some way different. Okay, so do I have good columns? Am I weighting things? So you can the next level of refinement, maybe I got the right columns, but they shouldn't all be equal weight. So this is a good column, but it's not nearly as important as this one over here on teamwork or something like that. And having even some fails when I've done this type of process before, you also need a red flag kind of if you're going to put in a spreadsheet and do something like that. You need to be able to have a red flag in there. It's like, okay, they may be rock stars in here, but if this column's a 1, it doesn't matter. They need to go, right? And so you need opportunity.
Chemistry could be one of those.
Chemistry could be one of those because as good as you are, you're making the other 5 people on the team suck, right? And I'd rather have.
And you may be only that good because they are carrying you.
Right, right. So it's really just a tool, right? You don't use it blindly. But doing a tool like that makes the process so much more objective. There's less stress with it. There's less anxiety. It's easier to communicate. So that's something you can do with the team, right? If you just go around the table, think about it this way. If you go around the table like, okay, here's our, the 10 people on the team. Who do you think we should get rid of? And they may come up with 2 people. And then, you go around the table. Compare that with, okay, here's our framework. Let's fill this out together, or maybe all of you fill it out and we'll average everybody's numbers out. I mean, that's even a cooler way. Here's a scorecard, basically. Everybody score, everybody on the team, and that's a really cool process. So now we average everybody's score out, that they've contributed, and now we've got a really nice, everybody's voice has been thrown into this thing, and now we've got a language to talk about who should stay and why, or who should leave, if you have to make that decision. Right?
And when you say involve the team, are you talking about
Assuming
Susie and Joe, or you're talking leadership team?
I'm talking leadership team. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I can see that. I could see that being valuable. We've talked about that, something along those lines on several occasions in the C12 circles I run in, and not really to use in troubled times, but also in good times, like as you're assessing, the annual review kind of thing.
Use a very similar process for prioritizing projects. So if you've got 20 projects, you can only afford to do 3. Which 3 do you do? Well, you do the same kind of process with it. Well, what's most valuable about it? Doing something fairly objective like that can help you prioritize, at least better than just saying, well, this one hurts the most, so we're going to do that one.
Final thoughts on rock stars. Is there any better ways of communicating with rock stars? Is there any, take them to lunch and tell them they're a rock star? Is there, form a secret club of rock stars? I mean, like is there any anecdotal or scientific evidence that say treat your rock stars differently?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple things. I think one is thinking longer term with your people, not just what's this next week hold for us. Where do I hope this person will be in 5 years? And where do they hope that they'd be in 5 years? And so thinking longer term, sitting down with them, helping them build a plan, a growth strategy, flourishing strategy, and it can include their personal life as well. If you're in that place, or invite a coach or a chaplain in that can help them with their personal side if you feel like that's a boundary that you shouldn't cross as a leader. But help them build a plan and a strategy, and it's a mutual strategy. Where, okay, I know what your 5-year plan is or your 3-year plan is. Doesn't mean that that's exactly what it's going to be, but I can see where you
conceptually
want to head, and I want to buy into that too. So how can I help you now become not just how can I get you to make the company be what we want it to be in 5 years, right? This is my people as an outcome. How can now the company come alongside you and help you become who you want to be in 5 years? Maybe that's starting their own business, right? Or leaving or going into a different industry. As a leader, would we be able to say, okay, I want to help you become that? How's that person going to respond over the next 5 years if they know that you're helping them get to this next thing that doesn't include the company?
I think that's one of the fundamentals of the dream manager concept, right? Is even if you become my competitor, I'm going to help you get there.
Yeah.
It's like, are you prepared as a leader? Do you believe that people are that important that you're willing to say, I will help you achieve your goals, your dreams, even if it's to become my competitor? Yeah. That really causes a lot of leaders to stop and rethink. And it's a great litmus test, though, to like, how much do you value people and how much do you trust that doing the right things for the right reasons is going to have rewards? Is it a scarcity mentality, or is it an abundance mentality? Well, if you're an abundance mentality leader, right, and I look at you and go, Brent, well, if you want to be my competitor in 10 years, let me help you get there. And you're going to be a good one.
Yeah.
And you'll be like, what? Are you serious? And so that really, the few companies I've seen that embrace that, it's a very different culture in a good way.
Right.
Because their people are like, yeah, my boss is all in. This company is all behind. My dream's hanging on a vision board over there for everybody to see. Right. And it's an interesting concept. And it really checks, it's a heart check for the leader.
It's a heart check. It takes faith, right? So that's one of those things where a leader has to step out in faith, because that bad things can happen, right? You're taking hands off of some controls, and bad things can happen, or negative things might happen because of this choice, but it's the right one. Those are the types of decisions that build trust over a long haul. And just because you have a rock star on your team, they may not be living at rock star levels if the trust level is low. And so investing in them like that, looking for opportunities to build real trust, living out our own values, making tough decisions that are costly. Those are the things that are going to keep those rock stars engaged and functioning at a rock star level.
Cool. Any final thoughts?
Well, I think I do like music a lot, and so I like using the word rock star. And so playing music together is a great analogy that that takes some skill, but it also takes a lot of connection and relationship and communication in the sweet spot of like high performance, where when you've got a great jazz ensemble that's playing together, and yes, they're all playing something different, but it all goes together, and they're playing off of each other. You put just one of those musicians by themselves, and they're not as good as when they're playing together. And so thinking of all the dancing, I call it dancing, learning to dance with our people, learning to not just control and to have a unidirectional thing, but really learning how to connect and dance and work together, develop, understand. There's lots of things that we know, we hear all the times, but this is the time as leaders that we need to pull all those things into it and focus on leading my people and not just managing and driving the company, but really leading people.
That's good. Well, as always, it's a pleasure having you on the show.
So much fun.
Thanks for coming out today.
Thanks, Joel.
See you next time.
All right.